Hey guys, Steinixos here. So today we'll be answering the question of if current manga Luffy, that's Wano Luffy, that's currently fighting Kaido, could beat the first 5 Hokage, that is Hashirama, Tobirama, Hiruzen, Minato, and Tsunade. I'll eventually do a video of Luffy and Zoro versus Naruto and Sasuke, so that's why I'm leaving out Kakashi and Naruto from this video. Now the structure of this video will be a little different from my other versus videos, in that I won't be going over the basics of chakra and haki, nor will I be going through the basic background characteristics of each character like stamina, durability, speed, etc. before beginning the battle. I'll just be jumping right into the battle and scale as necessary. And of course, there will be no equalization between haki and chakra. So with that, let's jump right into it. Now we'll be considering this battle in 2 rounds. The first round is Luffy versus each of the Hokage individually, so a 1v1, and the second round is Luffy versus the Hokage working together as a team, so a 5v1. So let's kick off the first round with the 5th Hokage, Tsunade. Tsunade's whole shtick is that she's very strong and very good at medical ninjutsu. As a result, her fighting style mainly relies on blunt force physical attacks like kicks and punches. These physical attacks are so strong that she can casually make a crater with a dropkick, and she can even split the ground using one finger. She has even been stated to be stronger than the 4th Raikage, who is able to casually do similar feats. But the fact that most of Tsunade's offensive arsenal is comprised of blunt force physical attacks is the first major problem here. This is because Luffy, who ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi fruit, is a rubber man who is completely resistant to blunt force physical attacks. They do not harm him at all. This is stated in all of the data books and has been a central repeated theme in the anime and manga, so this shouldn't be a controversial point at all. So with that said, we've established that despite Tsunade's strength, her blunt force physical attacks, which is most of her offensive arsenal, is completely useless against Luffy. But what about her medical ninjutsu? Because apart from healing herself, she can use her medical ninjutsu offensively to disrupt and rewire a person's nervous system by converting her chakra to electricity and sending it into the person's body. We saw this in her fight against Kabuto, but again, herein lies another major problem due to Luffy's devil fruit. Luffy being a rubber man makes him completely resistant to electricity. We saw this in his fight against Enel, who ate the lightning fruit. So again, due to Luffy's very nature, Tsunade's attack will just not work on him. He could literally just stand still without activating haki, and she just could not hurt him. The only thing she has in her arsenal that could potentially do some damage is Katsuo, her slug summon that can spit a deadly acid that can vaporize stone. But in a one-on-one, it's almost impossible for Luffy to get caught by that. Immediate post-time skip Luffy, at base, was casually dodging light beams from a pacifista, and even if it could somehow connect, remember that Alabasta arc Luffy, that is basically beginning of series Luffy without armament haki, was able to keep fighting after being hit by Crocodile's poison, a poison that is similar to Katsuo's poison, in that it is able to dissolve stone on contact. So it should be clear that Tsunade is basically useless even against a pre-time skip Luffy that does not know haki and who has barely mastered his devil fruit. And Tsunade does have good durability that is amplified due to her amazing regenerative capacity, which allows her to heal from a piercing wound to the abdomen and even after being split in half. But this would be easily overwhelmed by even an immediate post-time skip Luffy. A casual gear second punch from immediate post-time skip Luffy shattered the ground below a pacifista and caused it to explode. For reference, pacifistas are composed of a metal even stronger than steel. This was demonstrated when pre-time skip Zoro's attack on a partially converted Kuma only resulted in a gash in the metal, and Zoro at this point was already established to be able to cut steel from like 300 episodes ago in Alabasta. Pre-time skip Sanji's leg was even almost broken when he attempted to kick this partially converted Kuma. So the pacifistas are durable, and even immediate post-time skip Luffy is clearly faster than Tsunade, and with observation haki he would always know where she is and what she's going to do. So Tsunade definitely loses without really being even a challenge at all. Now let's talk about the 4th Hokage, Minato. When we are talking about Minato's battle strategy, the main thing we think about is flying Raijin teleportations and Rasengan. That's like 95% of what he usually does. So the first question that usually comes up is, well, can't Minato just forcibly teleport Luffy to some water body, thus winning the match? And the answer is no. Strong Haki has been clearly stated to be a countermeasure against forced teleportation, and Luffy is definitely at the point where we can say his Haki is strong, so that's out of it. Now what about Rasengan? Now I won't really argue about if Rasengan could hurt Luffy or not. For argument's sake, let's assume that Rasengan could potentially hurt Luffy. Beginning of series, Luffy was tanking building-sized explosions. And remember, this is Luffy near the start of the series without armament haki. It is unlikely that any Rasengan that Minato can do could significantly hurt even pre-time skip Luffy that doesn't know armament haki. So that's also out of it. And it's not like he can pierce him with a kunai. Again, armament haki exists. So the only thing that Minato really has in his arsenal is the Reaper Death Seal. Now in a one-on-one, Minato will not catch Luffy. Luffy with basic observation haki could already predict all of Minato's movements, much less Luffy with advanced observation haki who can literally see into the future. And the immediate post-time skip Luffy at base already had fast and light reaction time. Now since we're on the topic, I just want to say that it's really silly how some fans will say that Luffy dodging the Pacifista's light beams does not mean he has a faster than light reaction time, but will say that Naruto and every other high level ninja in the Naruto series should somehow be scaled to have faster than light reaction time and combat movement and attack speed of faster than light because Naruto dodged a single light fang jutsu from Madara that was stated to be light speed in a databook. That is obviously silly and just plain dishonest. And I mean the existence of Enel and Kizaru in the One Piece verse, characters that are literally lightning and light respectively, who have literally been shown to travel as literally lightning and literally light, and whose attacks are all literally lightning and literally light, provides the One Piece verse with a far better basis for scaling to faster than lightning and faster than light speed than anything that has been shown in the Naruto verse. And a second point to note is that some people will try to diminish Luffy's feat of casually dodging the Pacifista's light beams by bringing up observation haki. Again, this is pretty silly. Even if Luffy knows when and where the lasers are going to be fired, he still needs to be fast enough to react to them after they have been fired, and he clearly casually dodged the beams after they had been fired. For example, take Luffy's fight against Katakuri when he was learning advanced observation haki. At this point, he was not just predicting the future, he was also learning how to literally see into it. But just because he could see Katakuri's future attacks doesn't mean he could react fast enough to dodge them. And remember, in the Katakuri vs Luffy fight, this is a Luffy that has had 300 plus episodes for growth after casually dodging the Pacifista's light speed attack at base. So even a stronger and faster Luffy, who was already beyond light speed at base, was still struggling to keep up with Katakuri's attacks even while learning a more advanced version of observation haki that literally allowed him to see into the future. So there is no doubt that high level One Piece characters are casually able to both react to fast and light attacks as well as actively fight at faster and light speeds. And current Wano Luffy is even faster and stronger than he was in the fight against Katakuri. So Minato can't really do anything against Luffy, and it's not like he can evade Luffy either by teleporting around, because he's fighting an opponent who can literally see when and where he's going to teleport, and who at base is casually able to keep up with him without even bringing forth his faster version, Gear 4 Snake Man. And Minato is even less durable than Tsunade and doesn't have a healing factor of her level, so he definitely won't be able to survive long after receiving even a few second gear punches from even immediate post time skip Luffy. So Minato also loses easily. Now we'll skip the third Hokage because I want to save him for last. So let's talk about the second Hokage, Tobirama. Because Tobirama specializes in water style jutsus, a lot of people think that this is a Luffy definitely loses type of moment, which again is kind of silly. I recently made a video called Silly Arguments Against High Tier Logias, and this "but what about water though" argument was one of the main reasons. Now Luffy isn't a high tier Logia, he's a Paramecia, but it more or less still applies. So let's go over a Devil Fruit user's interaction with water. So it is a fact that on paper, water is a Devil Fruit user's weakness. But in practice, things just are not that simple. And that is especially the case when dealing with high tier Logias. So firstly, let's get the most ridiculous thing out of the way. Just touching water does not weaken a Devil Fruit user. For a Devil Fruit user to be fully incapacitated by water, most or all of their body needs to be submerged within it. And if a particular limb is significantly submerged in water, then this saps away at the Devil Fruit user's strength. But they can still move, and in some instances they can even carry out an attack. Luffy, for example, has been shown to carry out a Gear 3 punch against Tsunade with his hand completely submerged underwater. Secondly, moving water like rain or waves does not weaken a Devil Fruit user. It is standing water like rivers and lakes that does this. This was both stated in an interview by Oda and is clearly shown in the anime and manga. Smoker has been shown to use his smoke powers in heavy rain with no problems whatsoever. Well, that is until Dragon showed up. And Luffy, who was also in this heavy rain, was also shown to be using his powers just fine with no indication of being weakened. As a matter of fact, Luffy has also been shown to be completely showered by a flood of seawater that Zunisha used to bathe itself, and he gave no indication of him being weakened or his powers being sapped away. So if any random water jutsu like a water dragon were somehow able to hit Luffy, Luffy doesn't just suddenly lose his power or ability to fight. For Tobirama to successfully beat Luffy using a water style jutsu, he would have to flood the field and bring Luffy underwater like what he did to Hiruzen. But in a one-on-one, it is more or less impossible to do so. Like with Minato, Tobirama can't forcibly teleport Luffy with Flying Raijin due to Luffy's haki. And again, like with Minato, there is no way Tobirama is catching Luffy off guard even if this was immediate post-time skip Luffy, who only had basic observation haki. And Luffy can fly with Gear 4, so a flooded field doesn't change much. And it's not like Tobirama could hide underwater, because Luffy would know his position with observation haki, and Luffy can even attack him while he's underwater. Again, Luffy has been shown to attack Tsunade, a giant octopus, with his hand completely submerged underwater. He has also been shown to attack Horde with Red Hawk, again with his hand completely submerged underwater. And by the way, Red Hawk is an attack in which Luffy's hand is on fire, and somehow this works when his hand is completely submerged underwater. That doesn't make any sense. But anyway, the point is, even though Tobirama on paper has an elemental advantage since he's using water and he's fighting a Devil Fruit user, that's just on paper. In practice, Luffy's mastery of his Devil Fruit and of haki completely reverses this dynamic and makes the gap between Tobirama and Luffy far too wide for Tobirama to even stand a chance. And like Minato and Tsunade, Tobirama is not surviving a couple gear second punches from even immediate post-time skip Luffy, much less Wano Luffy. So that's the second Hokage. Now let's talk about the main opponent, the god of shinobi, Hashirama Senju. So as we have already established from the fight with Tsunade, you can't hurt Luffy using a regular blunt force physical attacks. And a lot of Hashirama's offensive arsenal is indeed blunt force physical attacks. For example, all his taijutsu, his wood dragon jutsu, his wood golem jutsu, and even his 1000 hands release technique, Shinsu Senju, are all regular blunt force physical attacks. So those are already out of it, even against base Luffy without the use of haki. Now I really want to hammer this point in, because inevitably there will be some people who just don't want to accept this, even though it is one of Luffy's main defining features. So this is Little Garden, a prehistoric island in early One Piece that, as you can see, still has dinosaurs. Now on Little Garden, you have these two mountain-like dinosaur skeletal head remains. One of these was literally placed on Luffy's lower body, and he was literally just there, chilling, no harm whatsoever. So a punch from even Shinsu Senju would have the same effect as this giant skeletal head remain that was placed on Luffy. That is to say, none whatsoever. To hurt Luffy with a blunt force physical attack like a punch without using armament haki. You need to bypass his rubbery durability by attacking him from the inside. The underlying principle to do this is by sending shockwaves into his body that impact with the water within him. And even a rubber man like Luffy is still greater than 60% water, so his devil fruit can't cancel this. This has been done through the use of fishman karate by Jinbei and other fishmen like Hordy. It is also the principle of Hashoken used by Sai in the tournament at Dressrosa, and is the principle of Rokugan, one of the 7 special superhuman martial art techniques called Rokushiki that CP9 members like Rob Lucci use. And it's also the principle of the impact dial, and that is how Usopp was able to hurt Luffy during their fight. The only people in the Narutoverse capable of doing a similar technique to this are the Sound Ninja, because that's basically the basis of all of their attacks. So with that, I'm hoping we can leave this point aside. Regular blunt force physical attacks, even a big one like Shinsu Senju, won't be able to hurt even pre-time skip Luffy who does not know Haki. However, Hashirama's powers are way more malleable than the other Hokage, so he could potentially reconfigure his wood dragons and his wood golems and almost any of his other wood techniques to have sharp wooden spikes, which is a piercing attack that Luffy's devil fruit cannot negate. But this is where armament haki comes into play. Basic level armament haki can easily block steel swords, axes and bullets. So despite Hashirama's wood techniques being way stronger than normal wood, it wouldn't even pierce basic armament haki. So again, these reconfigurations are more or less useless. But we know that he also has used genjutsu before, specifically the Bringer of Darkness technique, which he used in his fight against Hiruzen when he was reanimated by Orochimaru. And this technique exerts a hallucinatory effect upon the target's eyesight, effectively blinding one's opponent. But it does not stop the other senses, by the way. Now, I have already thoroughly explained why genjutsu would not work on those outside the Narutoverse in my Admirals vs Ninjas video, so I won't be doing that again here. But just for argument's sake, let's say it could work. Again, it would still be useless because observation haki exists. To get basic observation haki, it was literally part of Luffy's training to learn to anticipate attacks with his eyes closed. Basic level observation haki allows you to know the position and number of enemies, as well as allows you to predict their attacks, and this is whether you can see them or not. And we know that current Luffy has advanced observation haki, where he can not only predict what an opponent is going to do, but he can literally see into the future. So Bringer of Darkness is definitely out of this, even if it could possibly work. Hashirama also has his Advent of a World of Flowering Trees jutsu, and this is where he grows a dense forest of flowering trees. The pollen in the flowers of these trees is then released into the atmosphere, and when inhaled makes the target unconscious. Now, just like when this was used against the 5 Kages, Luffy can easily fly over these, and he can easily destroy these trees and flowers with Gear Force Snake Man and Boss Man without being close to them. So again, not really effective here. Now I want to take a second to bring this conversation back to Shinsu Senju, the several thousand hand release technique. We have already established that it would not be able to hurt Luffy, but what I now want to talk about is, could Luffy destroy it? So to answer this question, we'll need to do some scaling to figure out just how big Shinsu Senju is. Now, a lot of people use pixel scaling, which I find ridiculous for many reasons, but I won't get into that here. The other method is to use perspective scaling, but this can be very tricky for many reasons. Like a lot of times, depending on the perspective, the size of the characters change. And a lot of times, people over or underestimate the size of certain background structures that are used for scaling. Like for example, how tall are these mountain-like elevations in this image? We really just don't know. Yet you'll have some people claiming that they must be some absurd figures. So ideally, I would have liked if the author specifies Shinsu Senju's size, but since we don't have that, we'll have to do some perspective scaling. Now we will use Gamabunta as our base of reference because his height is actually stated in the databooks to be 17 meters. Now I think we can comfortably say that Gamabunta Gamabunta and Shukaku are about the same height because they have been more or less on the same level in every perspective we have ever seen them together in. And Shukaku is about the same height as all the other tail beasts with the exception of Kurama. So from this we can definitely say that the first to 8 tail beasts are definitely below 25 meters in height because they are comparable to Gamabunta, who is confirmed to be 17 meters in height. Now I think it is a general consensus that Kurama is taller than the other tail beasts, even though certain perspectives put them on the same level. And I mean, we can easily infer that from this picture of Gamabunta and Kurama fighting. Kurama here is obviously bigger than Gamabunta, but you'll note that he isn't significantly bigger. Now I would say at max, using this interaction, Kurama is about 25 meters in height, and that is basically 1.5 Gamabuntas. However, as I have said before, perspectives can be tricky, and we want to make sure we don't underestimate his size. So let's be as generous as possible here. Let's double that 25 meters to 50 meters. That is only 1 meter away from 3 Gamabuntas. And from this image, we can already see that 1 Gamabunta is obviously comparable to Kurama. So obviously 3 Gamabuntas would be more than enough to encompass Kurama's size. So I don't think that anyone can argue for Kurama being bigger than this if we're being consistent. But remember though, the Kurama that Gamabunta is fighting here is the Kurama whose chakra was split in half. So to cover all our bases, let's assume that Kurama's height was also split in half during this process. And thus we'll double this 50 meters to 100 meters. Now again, the evidence would suggest that Kurama is absolutely nowhere close to this size, but we're being as generous as possible here. Now with that, Kurama can now serve as a good base of reference for Shinsu Senju. Now as I've said before and will continue to say, perspectives can be tricky. But in this instance, all we can do is make a guesstimate about Shinsu Senju's height based on how it looks compared to Kurama. Now we'll treat the addition in height that would be caused by the Susanoo armor around Kurama as negligible, because at most it should only add a few meters since it's just armor. It's not like Kurama is standing on a Susanoo, and we were already pretty generous to begin with. So let's stick with 100 meters. So based on this picture, I would say that 10 Kuramas stacked vertically would definitely be taller than Shinsu Senju, and 10 Kuramas stacked horizontally would also be wider. So a 1000 meters in height and width should be acceptable for Shinsu Senju. Now let's compare this with some sizes in One Piece. Tsureme, the giant octopus that Luffy was able to basically one-shot, is confirmed by Oda to be 300 meters in height, and that is over 3 times taller than the already generously calculated height of the 9-tailed fox, and over 15 times taller than Shukaku and the other tail beast, even if you were to upscale them to 20 meters. And remember, Luffy's punch in this instance was weakened because it was completely submerged underwater, and as a matter of fact, with similar Gear 3 punches, Luffy was also able to make Noah almost irreparable in what seems to be under a minute. Now the size of Noah has not been confirmed, but let's try to make a guesstimate about how big it is. Noah is generally thought to be at least half the size of Fishman Island. Now we don't know Fishman Island's size, but we do know it has a population of over 5 million residents. So for reference, to house 1 million people at 10 persons per acre, and an acre is about 60% the size of a soccer field. To do this, you would require 160 square miles or 400 square kilometers. This would work out to a space of land that is 20,000 meters in length and width. And remember, this is just for housing. We aren't even including space for recreation, wildlife, and other general things like that. Now, even if you are to assume that Fishman Island is as compact as possible and only has housing, which is obviously false, then the least amount of space it would require to house 1 million persons is 10 square miles. Thus, to house the 5 million residents of Fishman Island, that would require at least 50 square miles, which works out to land space of about 11,000 meters in length and width. So if Noah is at least half of that, that would make Noah at least 5,500 meters. And remember, this is after we underestimated the size as much as possible. And we expect Noah to be at least this big, because the only things that can carry around Noah are multiple giant sea kings that are confirmed to be greater than 5,000 meters in size. And Noah isn't a weak ship. For reference, most modern submarines, no, not all, but rather most, so most modern submarines would be crushed by water pressure and literally implode if it went deeper than 3,000 meters below sea level. Noah has been standing firm 10,000 meters below sea level for over a century, and a heavily injured and fatigued Fishman Arc Luffy was about to almost make this ship irreparable in under a minute, using regular Gear 3 armament haki punches. This wasn't Wano Luffy, or Whole Cake Chateau Luffy, or even just Rosa Luffy. This was Fishman Arc Luffy, who literally just came back from his training. And he wasn't even using Gear 4 punches. The shockwaves of a serious Gear 4 punch has been shown to spread across all of Dressrosa to the surrounding sea. And after this Gear 4 punch connected with Luffy, it propelled him with so much force that most of the city they were in was split in half when he came in contact with the ground. Luffy wasn't using this, he was using Gear 3 punches. And again, remember, this wasn't even healthy Luffy that was destroying Noah. This was a fatigued and heavily injured Luffy who had just finished a long battle with Horde. And remember, Horde is so strong that he can throw a normal droplet of water with so much force that it breaks through multiple mountainous reef-like structures without showing signs of stopping. So even if we are to scale Shinsu Senju to 1000 meters, even a weekend Fishman Arc Luffy could have easily taken care of it. So obviously it would be no problem for current Wano Luffy, whose haki is now splitting the sky after colliding with Kaido. Hashirama also has immaculate healing, which is stated to be way better than Tsunade, who, as we already said, could recover from a piercing wound to the abdomen and even being split in two. But again, Luffy would eventually overwhelm Hashirama, especially if he uses advanced armament haki, which destroys you from the inside. And remember, advanced haki is basically the only thing that can hurt Kaido, the guy who can drop 10,000 meters from a sky island without being guarded whatsoever, without receiving so much as a scratch, and who under normal circumstances can't even be cut or impaled. So Hashirama also loses without a doubt. Now the reason I saved the third Hokage, Hiruzen, for last is because of the one line that almost everyone likes to repeat, and that is, Prime Hiruzen was stated to be the strongest Hokage and was said to be called Professor because he mastered so many jutsus. Now I really doubt that Hiruzen was stronger than the first Hokage, but even if we are to say he was, at best it was probably just a little bit stronger. I don't think anyone would make the case that Prime Hiruzen would obliterate Hashirama or Madara. And Prime Hiruzen is obviously less durable than Hashirama. I mean, the entire Naruto franchise is literally being kept alive by Hashirama's cells. I mean, that's a joke, but you do get what I mean. Hashirama's regenerative potential is basically treated to be unmatched in the Narutoverse. Well, that is until Madara became Jubidara. So I can't imagine even Prime Hiruzen being more durable. And just because Hiruzen knew a lot of jutsus, that really doesn't matter much. Like Tile Shuriken is a literal jutsu that Hiruzen used against reanimated Hashirama and Tobirama. So Luffy being able to beat Hashirama says to me that he would easily be able to deal with Prime Hiruzen, even if it was true that Prime Hiruzen was the strongest Hokage. So that's round 1. All of the Hokage would lose to Luffy in a 1v1 battle, most of them quite easily, with Hashirama probably putting up the greatest challenge. Now let's move on to round 2, where it's a 5 vs 1 team battle against Luffy. Now honestly, not much really changes here. As I have already said, Tsunade is basically useless against Luffy offensively, so the most she could do here is act as a healer for her party. And in the worst case scenario, Tsunade is completely knocked out by Conqueror's haki as soon as the match begins. But I think this is very unlikely. And this won't be a Pain versus Jiraiya situation, because even with basic observation haki, even though Luffy is in effect fighting 4 people at once, there will be no surprises, and he's fast enough to react to anything that comes his way, even Tobirama and Minato teleporting all over the place. And it's unlikely that he would get caught in any sealing techniques, even with the Hokage working together. Because with the combination of observation haki and the fact that he's blatantly faster than all of these Hokage, just makes that too improbable. And as already said, the only Hokage out of the 5 that is durable enough to last any significant amount of time against Luffy is Hashirama due to his unmatched regenerative capacity. So it's not like their 5 versus 1 advantage will last long anyway. It would quickly turn into Hashirama versus Luffy. And I have already spoken about how that match would go. So yeah, Luffy wins both rounds. And by the way, of course, I could imagine some possible instance where the Hokage teamwork gives them the win. But that seems like the outlier situations to me, for reasons already stated. But you may disagree, so let me know what you thought of the video down in the comment section below. And of course, don't forget to like, share and subscribe if you liked the video. But anyway, see you guys next time.